Hello, class. Good day. For our new lesson today, we're going to discuss one of the most important international institutions in the world, and that is the United Nations. So, we are going to explore what it does, how it works, and why it matters in our globalized world. Okay, so if you remember, class, our lesson in global politics, the liberal internationalism by Immanuel Kant, wherein he wanted to form a global government. So, as per Kant, without a form of world government, the international system would be chaotic. However, that did not happen. So, the world still has no global government and no global authority. However, no, um, let's recognize something important. Um, we live in a global society, but there is no single government that rules overall in overall countries. So that means that we need systems to manage world affairs in a peaceful, organized way. And this is where global governance comes in. Yan. So global governance helps make global affairs systematic and secure even without a world government. Remember, class, that global governance is rule based, meaning it has no central authority or everyone follows agreed upon rules. No? It's like organizing a group project without a leader, and everyone must follow the plan and do their part. So that's the essence of global governance. Now, class, to help with this global governance, we have international organizations. The international organizations are groups made up of member states or countries. So these organizations help create rules, give guidance, and sometimes they even solve conflicts. So ano nga ba ang member states? When we say member states, ito yung mga bansa, no? These are countries that have officially joined an international organization like the United Nations, meaning when a country becomes a member state, it agrees to follow the rules, participate in meetings, and help make decisions in that organization. For example, class, the Philippines is a member state of the United Nations, which means as well that the Philippines has to attend United Nation meetings. It votes on global issues, and it also cooperates with other countries under the United Nations goals like peace and human rights. To continue our discussion about international organizations, there are following powers of IOs. One power of international organizations is the power of classification. In this, they create categories that define global standards. For example, class, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has the right to seek asylum, and that sets a global standard for how we treat refugees. So, think of the United Nations as a global rule book that ensures fair treatment of people seeking safety in other countries. Next, they also have the power to fix meanings. Ano ba ito? The power to fix meanings, class, it means they define important ideas. So, for example, the United Nations defines security as freedom from fear, freedom from want, and dignity. So, these definitions shape how countries must act. um, the United Nations helps everyone understand important concepts the same way, ensuring that countries work together to create a safer world. So that's their idea, and that's how they define security. Finally, class, the international organizations can diffuse norms or spread socially accepted rules. So, for instance, the United Nations created guidelines or businesses to respect human rights. And these rules are not laws, but companies are expected to follow them. So the business and human rights set the standards for cooperate responsibility. So just like schools, that they have rules for students to follow. So, in the same idea that the United Nations creates guidelines for businesses and governments to act responsibly. Let's now focus on the United Nations or UN. It's the most well known organization today. And let's proceed to the next part of our discussion. At this point, class, I'd like to introduce someone who is very important in global leadership and peacekeeping, and that is Antonio Guterres. So, who is he? Antonio Guterres is the Secretary General of the United Nations, which means that he is the top official of the UN. He became Secretary General in January 17 and was re-elected for a second term in 2022. So, big deal siya, class, because it only means that he is trusted by the international community to continue leading one of the most important organizations in the world, no, and that is UN. But before becoming the UN Secretary General, he was already an experienced leader. So he served as a Prime Minister of Portugal from 1995 to 2002. He also worked as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees for 10 years, helping people who were forced to flee their countries due to war or violence. And what makes him stand out? Antonio Guterres is known for promoting human rights, gender equality, and climate action. He believes in the power of diplomacy and dialogue to solve problems. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, he called for global ceasefire so countries could focus on saving lives. So Antonio Guterres' class often reminds the world leaders that we are all interconnected and that working together is the only way we can tackle big global problems like climate change, poverty, and war. So, the next time you hear about the United Nations, remember that the man leading it is someone who's dedicated his life to peace, equality, and helping others. And that's no other than Antonio Guterres. Now, we know that United Nations is a huge international organization that works for peace, development, human rights, and cooperation among countries. But class, um, the United Nations has almost 200 member states. No? Some entities like Kosovo, Palestine, Taiwan, and the Vatican City are not full members for their own reasons. For example, Kosovo is not universally recognized as an independent state due to opposition from Serbia and some UN members. For Palestine naman, it is recognized as a non-member observer state and lacks the full UN membership due to political complexities. For Taiwan, it is considered still as part of China by the UN since 1971. So with that reason, no, um, it, it is preventing its separate membership. And lastly, the Vatican City, it declined membership to maintain neutrality in global politics. So, the UN was established in October 1945 with its 51 founding members. And please do not forget, class, that the primary goal of UN is to prevent another global war. So class, if I ask you what happens when countries fight and cannot agree, now you may answer it leads to conflict, and in the worst cases it can potentially lead to a global war. And that is actually correct. Imagine a war that involves almost every country in the world. That's what happened during World War One and World War Two, right? Millions of lives were lost, economies were destroyed, and families were torn apart. So after World War II ended in 1945, world leaders said, never again. That's when they created the United Nations. Its primary goal is simple but powerful, and that is to prevent another global war. The UN brings countries together to talk instead fight. It encourages peaceful solutions, sends peacekeepers to conflict areas, and promotes international cooperation. So, in short, the UN was built to be a platform for peace, to stop history from repeating itself, and to protect future generations from the horrors of war. So, every time you hear about the UN, remember that its number one mission is to keep the world from going to war again. Okay, so at this point we're going to explore or discuss the six main organs of the United Nations. Just like how our body has organs that perform different functions, like the heart pumping blood or the brain making decisions, the United Nations also has organs that work together to maintain peace, order, and cooperation among countries. And each organ has its own unique role, but they all work together with one big goal, and that is building a better and more peaceful world. Let's begin our quick overview for these six vital parts of the United Nations. Okay, so let's start with the General Assembly, the central, deliberative, and the only organ where all member states have equal representation in discussion and consideration and policy making. So the General Assembly, it's like the main meeting place of the United Nations. So imagine a big town hall where every country in the world gets a seat and a microphone. That's exactly what the General Assembly is. It's the United Nation body where all 193 member states are equally represented, no matter how big or small the country is. And here, the world leaders and diplomats come together to discuss global issues, make recommendations, and create policies that aim to solve problems like poverty, climate change, and global conflict. So every September class, leaders from around the world gather in New York City for the UN General Assembly to talk about the urgent global concerns like pandemics, war, hunger, and most importantly, climate change. So, for UN General Assembly, it's where the world talks and listens together. Next is the Security Council. This organ is in charge of one of the most important jobs, maintaining global peace and security. So whenever class there's a conflict between countries, a threat of war, or a crisis that needs urgent action, the Security Council steps in to decide what to do, like sending peacekeepers or imposing sanctions. And it has 15 members, but five of them are permanent. So it's China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So these five countries have special power called the veto. So what is this veto power? No? It says here that it allows them to block any resolution or decision. So it means if even one of these five countries says no to a decision, then it cannot move forward, even if all others agree. So best example here is the Russia. No, Russia has used its veto power many times, especially on issues involving Ukraine. The United States and China also use theirs often. So while the Security Council works to protect peace, its decisions can sometimes be delayed or blocked due to political disagreements among these powerful nations. Here's a real life example of how the Security Council deals with serious global conflicts. So, in the middle of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the UN Security Council through a video message. He called on world leaders to take stronger action against Russia and to protect innocent lives. He also urged the UN to stand firm for peace, human rights, and justice. So President Zelensky's speech was emotional and direct. He described the suffering of Ukrainian people and asked the Security Council to hold Russia accountable. But here's the issue, class. Russia is one of the five permanent members of the Security Council, and it used its veto power to block many resolutions. So this moment showed both the importance and limits of the UN Security Council. While it's a place to raise global concerns, it can also be difficult to act when powerful countries disagree. Now, still, President Zelensky's speech reminded the world why the UN exists, and that's to speak up, to seek peace, and to stand against war. Now, let's talk about ECOSOC, which stands for the Economic and Social Council. This organ is like the United Nations planning and advisory team when it comes to big global challenges, especially those that affect people's everyday lives. It focuses on economic growth, social development, as well as the environmental protection. So think of it, class, as the part of the UN that works on things like education, healthcare, clean water, poverty reduction, and climate change. ACOSOC brings together experts, leaders, and organizations from around the world to review policies, hold dialogues, and give advice on how to make the world better and fairer for everyone. So please remember, class, that ECOSOC is the main organ for cooperation on how countries can develop sustainably, no, not just for today, but for future generations. Class, take a look at this image. It represents the ECOSOC, or the Economic and Social Council. So as you can see, ECOSOC is right at the heart of the United Nations system when it comes to making the world a better place. It focuses on three key areas for sustainable development. Um, it's economic growth, social progress, and the environmental protection. But that's not all. ECOSOC also follows up on major UN conferences and global summits, making sure that the promises made by the countries are being kept. And here's something special. ECOSOC is also a gateway for partnerships. It allows non-government organizations, civil society groups, and even youth groups to take part and have a voice in global decision making. So in short, ECOSOC is where the UN listens, plans, and works with the world to build a sustainable future. The fourth organ is the Trusteeship Council, one of the lesser known organs of the United Nations, but still very important in history. So, this council was created to supervise 11 trust territories. These were regions that didn't yet have full independence or self government after the World War II. So the main goal of the Trusteeship Council was to make sure that these territories were prepared for independence with fair governments, education systems, and freedom to make their own decisions. It acted like a guardian, helping guide these areas until they could stand on their own. And here's something interesting, class. Since all the trust territories have now gained independence, the Trusteeship Council has finished its main task. So it hasn't been active in recent years, but it still exists in case it's ever needed again. So it's a reminder of how the UN helped the former colonies and small nations gain freedom and develop their own governments. So the Trusteeship Council was created to help certain regions of the world called the Trust Territories. So the Trust Territories, these were areas that didn't yet have a full independence after World War II, which I also mentioned in the previous slide. Um, they were placed under international supervision, and the goal was to guide them toward self government or full independence. So, the Trusteeship Council class, its job was to make sure that these territories were treated fairly, had proper governance, and were on the right path to becoming independent nations. So the examples of trust territories include the Western Samoa, Tanganyika, Rwanda, Urundi, the Cameroons under British administration, Cameroons under French administration, Togoland under British administration, Togoland under French administration, and the New Guinea. Thanks to the efforts of the Trusteeship Council, because all 11 trust territories eventually gained independence, completing the Council's mission. Today, class, the Trusteeship Council is no longer active. However, it remains an important part of the UN history and a symbol of support for nations in transitions. Take a look at this image class of the Trusteeship Council chamber at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. This was where the Trusteeship Council met to oversee the administration of the trust territories. So the chamber was designed by Finnish architect Finjal, and it has a unique and beautiful design that reflects peace, cooperation, and diplomacy, which are the core values of the United Nations. So the furniture was provided by the government of Denmark, adding a touch of Danish craftsmanship to the room. And this makes the chamber not just a place for important discussions, but also an example of international collaboration and design. In 1993, the Trusteeship Council officially suspended its operations since all the trust territories had gained independence, and today, the chamber remains a symbol of the UN's commitment to helping nations achieve self government. To proceed, let's talk about the fifth organ, which is the International Court of Justice, or ICJ. This is the UN's primary judicial organ where legal disputes between countries are resolved. So the ICJ class handles some of the most serious cases in international law, like genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, torture, and enforced disappearances. So countries can go to the ICJ when they have legal disagreements or need a decision on issues related to international treaties, human rights, or other major violations. It's like the world's highest court, no? Ensuring that justice is served on a global scale. It helps countries settle their disputes peacefully and fairly based on international law. In this image class, it shows the judges of the ICJ. The International Court of Justice is made up of 15 judges, and each serving a term of 9 years. And these judges are elected by two key UN bodies, the UN General Assembly and the UN Security Council. So each judge brings their expertise in international law, and together they make sure that justice is delivered fairly and impartially. The judges also come from different regions and legal systems, representing the global diversity of the United Nations. And finally, let's discuss the Secretariat. It's the engine that keeps the United Nations running smoothly. Yan. So, class, the Secretariat is responsible for carrying out the day-to-day work of the United Nations based on the activities and decisions made by the other UN organs like the General Assembly or the Security Council. So the Secretariat, it's the UN's administrative body. So they are tasked with organizing meetings, preparing reports, and implementing the policies that other organs decide on. So especially it helps turn ideas into action. The Secretariat is headed by the UN General, who is the chief administrative officer and the public face of the UN. The Secretary General, no, Antonio Guterres, works with thousands of staff members who assist in carrying out the UN's various programs and initiatives around the world. So, the United Nations class is not just a meeting place for countries to discuss issues, but it actually works on the ground to improve lives globally. And here's how. So, first is delivering humanitarian aid. The United Nations is involved in providing emergency aid to countries facing natural disasters, conflicts, or food crisis. So organizations like the UNHR or the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and then the WFP or the World Food Program, they play a huge role in delivering life-saving support. Second, promoting sustainable development. So the United Nations focuses on creating a better, fairer world for future generations by promoting sustainable development. So this involves protecting the environment, reducing poverty, ensuring quality education, and improving healthcare worldwide. So the SGDs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be tackled later, is also a key part of this mission. And lastly, upholding the international law. The United Nations works to ensure that international laws are followed, promoting peace and security and preventing conflict. So it ensures that human rights are respected and that justice is done on a global scale. So C-class, these efforts show that the United Nations is more than just a political body. It's a global partner working toward a better world for all. Class, in this image, it only showcases that the UN. Class, in this image, it only tells us that the United Nations, no, they carry out efforts in peacekeeping process. So through the UN peacekeepers, the organization helps maintain order, protect civilians, and provide humanitarian assistance in conflict zones. Um, Once peace has been restored, the United Nations shifts to peace building tasks in countries that have freed themselves from conflict. And this includes helping rebuild institutions, promoting reconciliation, supporting economic recovery, and fostering long term stability to prevent future conflicts. So, by engaging in both peacekeeping and peace building, the UN makes sure that countries not only stop fighting but are also able to move forward a peaceful and prosperous future. At this point, class, let's talk about the Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs, a bold and global commitment to create a better, more sustainable future for everyone. So the SDGs are a set of 17 interconnected goals created by the United Nations that serve as a blueprint to end or for addressing the world's most pressing challenges. And these goals are designed mainly to end poverty, protect the planet, and to make sure that there is prosperity for all by the year 2030. And here's what the SDGs aim to achieve. First is end poverty in all its forms. Now, making sure no one is left behind, no matter their background or situation. Next, ensuring that there is a quality education for all. So it's giving everyone access to the knowledge and skills needed to thrive. Third, to promote gender equality, no, empowering women and girls and ensuring equal opportunities for all, and also to address climate change. It's about protecting the planet by reducing emissions, conserving resources, and promoting sustainability. So those are just a few examples, but the SDGs cover everything, no, from clean water and sanitation to economic growth and to peace and justice. It's a big mission class, but the SDGs are a call to action. So, a promise to finish what we've started and leave the world in a better place for future generations. Um, every country, organization, and individual has a role to play in achieving these goals. And together, we can make a difference and build a more inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world. And to make real progress, cooperation is essential. Whether it's among nations, organizations, or individuals, working together is the only way to reform and advance the roles and functions of global efforts like the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Class international cooperation is the foundation of everything that the UN stands for. So by joining forces, countries can share knowledge and expertise to solve the world's most urgent problems, from poverty and hunger to climate change and conflict. So no one country can tackle these global challenges alone. In fact, collaboration allows us to find innovative solutions, ensure that everyone's voice is heard, and create a more equitable world. By working together, we can achieve a better, more sustainable future for all, one where prosperity, peace, and justice are not just aspirations but realities. So, whether through peacekeeping efforts, humanitarian aid, or development programs, cooperation is the key to making sure that there is progress and the world is a better place for future generations. Class, as we conclude the lesson, I hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the United Nations and its role, no, in promoting peace, security, and sustainable development across the globe. We've covered the six main organs from the General Assembly to the Secretariat and learned about their functions in shaping global cooperations. Um, but before we end class, here are a few reminders and facts that I didn't get to mention, no, earlier. First, the United Nations has 193 member states, and this means that almost every country in the world is part of the United Nations, working together to address global challenges. Second is that the United Nations headquarters is located in New York City, but it also has major offices in places like Geneva, Vienna, and Nairobi. Third, one of the most important missions of the United Nations is peacekeeping. The United Nations deploys peacekeepers to areas of conflict to maintain peace and ensure stability. Fourth, the UN Charter serves as the foundational document that outlines the structure, functions, and purposes of the UN. So it was signed in 1945, right after the end of the World War II, to prevent another world war from happening. And lastly, remember class that the UN's work is ongoing. No? Every day it involves the humanitarian assistance, environmental protection, healthcare, and advocacy for human rights around the world. So, let's carry forward the idea of global cooperation as we aim for a more peaceful and just world. Thank you so much, class, for your attention today, and do not forget to review the topics we covered. If you have any questions or want to go deeper into any of the UN's functions, feel free to reach out, and keep in mind that the United Nations depends on all of us collectively, no, to shape the future. Thank you so much.